Milli Vanilli, one of the most successful pop acts to come out of the late 1980s. The European duo took America by storm, selling over 6 million records with their debut album, Girl You Know It's True. In 1990, they won a Grammy for the Best New Artist. For any up-and-coming artist, holding an award of that prestige would be the perfect way to begin their musical journey. But it was the last thing that Rob and Fab of Milli Vanilli hoped for.
Thoughts were going through my mind, like, what are we gonna do now? Because you know that once you get this award, there's just more press and people want to talk to you and more of a risk to be discovered.
9 months later, it was revealed that they were not the real singers behind any of their songs, when in fact, they lip-synced their way to stardom.
From one day to another, we were laughed at, from fame to shame.
Let's take an extensive look at the tragedy of Milli Vanilli, from their early beginnings to Robert Pilatus' death in 1998. We'll see what Fabrice Morvan is up to now, and how shades of Milli Vanilli can still be seen in the music industry today through visuals and studio manipulation. In 1987, a group of local DJs from Baltimore, Maryland formed the electronic hip-hop band, the Numarx. After the success of their first single, the group returned to the studio and started working on their next song, Girl, You Know It's True.
I'm in love with you, girl, 'cause you're on my mind. You're the one I think about most every time when you crack a smile.
I originally produced the track for a group called the Numarx. They're from Baltimore. I wrote and produced their first album, some of the tunes, and Girl You Know It's True was one of the tunes. We came in the basement. Kevin Lyles of the Numarx, he first discovered the tape because he says, that music, it's a hit.
Unfortunately, it did not replicate the airtime of the last single. However, it did garner some attention in one city across the seas of the Atlantic. Our story picks up in a nightclub in Frankfurt, Germany. This club was American-based, meaning that residents of Frankfurt could tune in on what the music scene was like in the United States. There was a man who came here often. He worked as a musician, songwriter, and producer. He often brought his own records, and DJs played them without hesitation. He quietly stood back and observed the crowd as he made mental notes. What parts caused a reaction? What parts didn't? He returned to his studio and reworked his music in efforts to make it more thrilling and marketable. Who was this man? It was none other than the legendary producer Frank Farian. By this point in his career, he worked with the likes of Stevie Wonder, Toto, and Terence Trent D'Arby. It was here that Frank heard the single by Numarx. He saw merit in the track, but perhaps, with some polishing, he could do something with it. In the fall of 1987, Frank began production on his own musical interpretation of Girl, You Know It's True. He recruited rapper and singer Charles Shaw to rap the verses.
He asked me if I would like to do the studio project. I said, no problem, okay, hey.
And singer and keyboardist Brad Howell to sing the chorus.
I had been on stage many years with so many other different groups, and so I didn't want to be on the stage singing at the time I was that age, 46, 47 years old, but I wanted to make music behind the scene.
The song was released and performed well in radio stations. However, there was no indication of who the real artists were behind the music. Frank was in need of an act to front the band, one that had the drive to perform the song and the youth to be visually appealing to the eye. Frank knew exactly what he was getting himself into, because years prior to this, he did something similar with the group he created, known as Boney M. Frank Farian's dream was always to reach mainstream success in the United States. He replicated the sounds he heard from popular American music in his records, but would come face to face with rejection from record companies. Nevertheless, he remained diligent in the studio and found himself reworking Prince Buster's Al Capone. The song's overflowing sounds of funk, R&B, and soul, and the cover of a woman dancing behind the US flag furthered the impression of American music. Frank knew that performing these songs himself would be ineffective. Audiences would better enjoy the performance if their eyes weren't deceiving their ears. In the 1970s, lip-syncing was a common practice in the music industry. America had groups like the Village People, and Europe had groups like Silver Convention. Boney M's lineup consisted of Bobby Farrell, Liz Mitchell, Marcia Barrett, and Maisie Williams. The female singers lip-synced to their own pre-recorded vocals, while Bobby lip-synced to Frank's vocals.
Do you want the...
As the 1970s came to a close, Boney M became a multi-million-dollar phenomenon. Despite the fraudulence, any controversy regarding lip-syncing went under the radar. By the mid-1980s, the group disbanded and went their separate ways. By the end of that decade, the constantly evolving music industry bestowed a new era of music and artists. Frank saw an opportunity to repeat the successful Boney M formula with Milli Vanilli frontmen Robert Pilatus and Fabrice Morvan. Robert Pilatus was born on June 8, 1964, in Munich, Germany. As a result of his parents' premarital relationship, he was put up for adoption at an early age. He was the only African American in a predominantly white community. The racism he experienced pushed him into isolation. Subsequently, he lost interest in school, something that his stepfather frowned upon.
I was a very good athlete. My father wasn't. My father was a mathematician, a physician. I wasn't. So it was difficult. 13, 14, I ran away from home.
He managed to find his identity through athletics, breakdancing, and music. Picking up records by African American musicians was like looking into a mirror. At last, he was able to find someone with the same complexion staring right back at him. He picked up a guitar and gathered enough experience to join a band named Wind. Fabrice Morvan was born on May 14, 1966, in Paris, France. His father, who was from the Guadeloupe Islands, introduced him to Caribbean music at an early age. His fascination with music began upon seeing his grandfather play instruments for his family.
And suddenly this wall that was between adults and kids disappeared because music came in and transformed the whole vibe. As a kid, I took notice, told my mom, I want to do that.
He dedicated his adolescent years to learning the English language and incorporating movement into his love for music. After a series of altercations with his parents, Fabrice moved to Germany to pursue a new living. Initially, he was homeless and lived in train stations. Fortunately, he later found job opportunities in the dance field. By the mid-1980s, Robert and Fabrice were both living in Germany. Upon crossing paths, competition was looming in the air. Fabrice was in Robert's home turf of Munich. When they finally met, they discovered they were total opposites.
He was loud and had a healthy appetite for life. I was quiet, shy, and always thought twice before doing anything.
They soon realized they had similarities deep-rooted into their lives. Both had strained relationships with their parents, both were poor and living alone, and both had a fondness for the American music culture. As they worked through their communication boundaries, speaking broken English at first, they established a brotherhood bond and sought to make a living through their passions as models and dancers.
We did nothing else our whole life. You know, we just danced, listened to music, played around with instruments, you know?
In 1987, they crafted an image together by getting dreadlock extensions. They capitalized on the attention they drew and pursued music with the little experience they had. The following year, they released their first single, Danzez, under the name Empire Bazaar. Frank Farian had connections with their producer, Werner Schuler, so it didn't take long before the duo landed on his radar.
So we were at the mercy of the big producer. We were eager to please him. When it was time to sign a recording contract, hell yeah, where do we sign?
The contract was legitimate. There weren't any hidden clauses, except it was written in German, meaning Fab was unable to read it.
I'm like a little student from Munich. I want to make the big time. Now I feel this mogul, superstar, famous, multimillionaire, jet set producer right in front of me. Yeah, I believed in it.
The contract was signed, and for the months that followed, Rob and Fab received advance money. When asked to return, Frank was ready to showcase the song he produced for them. Little did they know, it was completed the year prior.
The first time I heard Girl Knows You was instrumental. Stuff was banging. He sat in his chair, be like, check this out, boom. And we were like, whoa.
They wasted no time and asked when they could start recording. Frank led them to a different room and directed his attention towards Rob.
It was a heated argument between both of them, you know, in German, and Frank stormed out of the room and Rob proceeded to explain to me what just happened.
So basically he said he needed an act. Since I'm an actor, an entertainer, a model, he needed an act who poses as a singer. You know, he don't want us to sing. He never tried our vocals.
So quick recap here. Brad Howell, Charles Shaw, and the Rocco twins were all brought into the studio at different times and worked on this as a side project. Rob and Fab signed their contracts first and were asked to lip sync second. This wasn't a group. They got together one day and mutually agreed on what the foundation of Milli Vanilli was going to be. Everyone involved so far was a piece of the puzzle. They were asked to return the advance money if they refused to go with the plan. Where was the money? They spent it. They were convinced to promote the single until the debt was paid off, but the contract they signed was actually for 3 albums. This was far from over. The trap was now set.
So the way to get out of it was to work for him, but in fact we got deeper into it.
But from the start, we signed a record deal that said we're allowed to sing and we're allowed to perform, but the producer didn't want to spend time and money for letting us do the job by ourselves, and he hired American professional people.
In the summer of 1988, Rob and Fab were ready to present themselves to the world with a new name, Milli Vanilli. What does Milli Vanilli stand for anyway? It was believed to translate to positive energy in Turkish, but that turned out to be false. One isn't called Milli, and the other isn't called Vanilli either. Frank's girlfriend, Ingrid, worked in the recording studio, and her nickname was Milli. They attached Vanilli to the end of it, and, well, it's simply a made-up word. Girl You Know It's True was released, and Milli Vanilli was set to promote the single throughout Europe for the months that followed.
So now we're promoting the record, and it's exciting because people are responding to the song, they're responding to us, and it's like, wow, we are rock star. When I say ho, you say hey, ho, ho, ho. Just like that, imagine a young man feeling that.
In addition to their performances, they released a music video, which allowed for them to become a global phenomenon in the MTV-influenced era. The timing seemed to be perfect, as having the right image was perceived to be the real focal point of any artist. When we see Rob and Fab packages Milli Vanilli, what is it exactly that we're seeing at face value? Well, here are two young men who resemble each other, and they look quite eccentric. Our eyes are immediately drawn to their dreadlocks and fitted suits, which often drew comparisons to Terence Trent D'Arby. While part of their appeal was theatrics and visuals, let's jump ahead to focus on their music. With the arrival of Milli Vanilli's music to America, there was a disconnect among some audiences as a result of their conception in Europe. While the production was solid, the lyrical content was often regarded as lightweight and shallow. To make matters worse, 3 of the top hits recycled the same drum track. Despite these flaws, their distinct sound made for remarkable music for those who enjoyed it. It capitalized on the versatile strengths of the real singers. John Davis's rapping abilities are showcased in songs like All or Nothing and Baby Don't Forget My Number, but he could also effortlessly switch over to singing with songs like Girl I'm Gonna Miss You and Dreams to Remember. Brad Howell's vocals are commonly heard in the chorus, but he actually takes on the lead in various tracks, such as Take It As It Comes and Blame It on the Rain, where he exhibits the power of a gospel singer. As Milli Vanilli rose to the charts, Charles Shaw, the rapper behind Girl You Know It's True, took notice of the single's flourishing popularity.
You have two sides. One side you feel good because you're saying, my voice done made it. But you're still sitting in the back and saying, that's not what I really wanted. I wanted to make it.
After suspecting that he was openly talking about his contributions to the project, he was fired. The reality was that there was an entire album under development. Since Frank's vision for the group had not yet reached its highest potential, he searched for a replacement vocalist. Enter professional singer and musician, John Davis.
He had told me that he had another rapper on the project before, but it was some complications. And then he asked me to try it, and I tried it, so I got the job. But I had to stay downstairs until all the musicians left. Nobody should have known that I was there.
En vosotros vamos a conseguir un éxito. Y cuando nos promocionó, secretamente, sin saberlo nosotros, terminó el álbum con 2 cantantes a quienes nosotros no conocíamos. Y al regresar dijimos, queremos cantar nosotros, pero entonces...
By November of 1988, Milli Vanilli skyrocketed to fame and became adored by fans of all ages and colors. Girl You Know It's True reached #1 in the German R&B charts, and their debut album, All or Nothing, was released. Once a song gains popularity in Europe, radio stations in New York pick up the song, and as a result, it spreads throughout the United States. It didn't take long before it caught the attention of the president of Arista Records, Clive Davis. If Frank signed Milli Vanilli to their label, his dream of breakthrough in the United States would become a reality. They would not only become bigger in America, but he could potentially dominate the music charts across multiple territories. A contract was promptly negotiated and completed.
I thought we were gonna make a video, we get paid, we make some money, and that's it.
The train was rolling. You know, it's like a snowball that goes down, and we're attached to it, but we couldn't get off.
Frank returned to the studio and revamped All or Nothing. It was released in America as Girl You Know It's True. On the back of the album, the vocals are credited to Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan. It's important to note that on the European release, their names are nowhere to be found. In January of 1990, they won 3 awards at the American Music Awards: Favorite Soul and R&B New Artist, Favorite Pop Rock New Artist, and Favorite Pop Rock Song. 1 month later, they found themselves nominated for the Best New Artist of 1990 for the 32nd Annual Grammy Awards. In the public eye, they celebrated.
For us, it's already an honor that we are nominated. The biggest honor that anybody in the world personally gave me. No, but we want to win it, and I hope we will hear from us in the future.
Behind closed doors, however, they were terrified of winning the prestigious award.
All what we wanted is not to get a Grammy. If we would get the Grammy, we knew our time was ticking.
Rob and Fab were no longer in nightclubs and arenas. They were now at the Shrine Auditorium, performing at the pinnacle of music awards. They somehow managed to swerve over the live performance customary and were allowed to lip sync, being quite possibly the only group to ever be waived of these regulations.
We're now backstage, holding our breath. Let it be Tone Loc, Soul to Soul, Indigo Girls. But not us. Please, don't do this.
And the best new artist is Milli Vanilli.
I was not happy when everybody said, yeah, Milli Vanilli is a Grammy. I goes under the table, and I know all the problems come in the next half year to me.
I mean, a Grammy? No, cannot believe it. And I got happy all over, cheers all over, and then got shocked because something gonna happen. Somebody gonna find out they are not really singing.
We want to say thank you very much, but we want to say there are a lot of artists here in this room, there are a lot of artists outside in the world who can achieve the same award that we achieved today, and it's an award for all artists in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
These awards are a symbol of integrity and triumph. They are held high as a medal of honor. Winning the Grammy put their artistic merit under a microscope and made them subjects of heavy scrutinization by the media.
How do you describe the winning concept, the winning combination here?
It's very important to have an impressive video, a dance, a song where people can dance, and an image, a right image.
For the next 8 months that followed, Rob and Fab's path to self-destruction detailed a world of dysfunction, drugs, money, and power. On the outside, their exposure through media appearances did nothing more than slowly unravel the truth.
The fact that you didn't sing the record was getting more difficult and more difficult because you're getting in touch with a lot more people. People want to talk to you, people want to have you in interviews, and obviously we had an accent, a very thick accent at the time.
Fab, how are you finding Australia? You enjoying it?
Oh, it's great. We were before in Sydney.
Sydney. Melbourne.
Sydney.
Sydney and Melbourne.
You know how to pronounce it, I don't know.
It's difficult, I know.
In 1989, Milli Vanilli were invited to perform on Soul Train. After performing their set in perfect English, they were interviewed by the host, Don Cornelius. The masquerade didn't appear to fool him.
So you recorded the album beginning in Germany, right?
Yeah, we recorded in Munich and Frankfurt because there's our studio.
So Rob, how come you do all the talking? Can Fad, you speak English, right?
Yeah, I can too.
Who are your favorite artists from the States?
I would like Bobby Brown, Comedy, Keith Sweat. These people are great, we think.
Perhaps the most compelling piece of media that has surfaced took place on the Canadian-French program Music Plus.
Okay, I'm fine. And you?
My name, Rob.
Okay. How does it feel to be in Montreal? It's the first time you're here.
It's a great city.
Yeah?
Yeah, Rob went to...
Yeah, maybe it's better. I don't know.
Rob and Fab grew inattentive as the interview progressed, not realizing that it was being broadcasted live around the country.
How does it feel to be an international star?
Yeah, well, let's wait. So we do it like this. Ja, also wir machen so. Wait a second, wait. You said to him.
Alors on est en direct, hein? On est en direct à la télévision. Comment ça? Oui, on est en direct. How does it feel to be an international star? I try again.
Their accents translated over to pop culture, such as this animated appearance they made on a Super Mario Bros. Cartoon. It's ironic to watch with the context we know today.
Is this a stall or what?
No stall. We can't sing for you without a band.
I want to be Vanilli.
No, you can't be Vanilli.
I am always Vanilli.
Milli Vanilli was famously parodied in the comedy TV series In Living Color. In the skit, they were ridiculed for their hair, accents, and dance skills. This sketch is seen as one of the catalysts to spread the rumors and influence Americans to start thinking more candidly about the group.
So at first it was just a whisper, and then some people pick up those rumors and make those whispers a lot louder. So Arsenio was one of those people. He was a late night host in American television, and he had a very successful show. And there he started making jokes about Milli Vanilli.
I had Milli Vanilli's greatest hits, but wasn't nothing in it.
In 1990, former vocalist Charles Shaw was once again speaking to the public about his involvement with the group. Upon hearing about this, Frank paid him $150,000 to retract his statements.
I did not retract the statements 8 days later that I rapped. I retract the statement about the singing. I did not sing on Girl You Know It's True. I only rapped on Girl You Know It's True.
Whenever you've performed, has anything really embarrassing happened to you?
Yeah.
In the summer of 1989, Milli Vanilli performed in Bristol, Connecticut as part of the MTV Club tour. An estimated 80,000 people showed up and danced along as they approached the chorus that shot them to stardom. Then, due to an audio malfunction, the song started to skip.
It stopped. Girl, you know it's girl, you know it's girl. 80,000 people. Girl, you know it's girl, you know. So I stopped, I panicked, I ran off stage.
Fans appeared to understand that CD skipping and tape jams were simply part of the norm. They didn't seem to care and proceeded to enjoy the remainder of the show. It's a common misconception that this event caused a scandal, but the revelations didn't come out until well over a year.
And as a matter of fact, while we were on the MTV tour, our emulator, where all the files were, or the vocals and music, broke down, so we had to sing live for a few gigs, and nobody noticed it.
La gente a veces en los conciertos cantábamos en vivo con nuestras propias voces.
¿Ah, sí?
Claro. Pero la gente no se daba cuenta. Por ejemplo, a veces el equipo técnico, por ejemplo, el sin clavier no llegaba a funcionar y en el... En fin.
In March of 1990, Rob and Fab were interviewed by Time magazine. This article is infamous for quoting Rob as saying, "Musically, we are more talented than Bob Dylan, Paul McCartney, and Mick Jagger." Music critics were enraged to see the fame get to their head. Allegedly, Rob's poor grasp on the English language got twisted in translation. He recounted the interview months later at the press conference.
So, yeah, what, yes. How many interviews you read and you know that it's not true what's in the interviews? How many you think in the American industry?
Maybe you will also. He was misunderstood. He never said those words. What he was trying to say, he was trying to on the pop level, like we affect people, the fans. We actually try to get the tapes You know, because he recorded the whole thing, like, we want to get the tapes. Please give us the tapes. Let us, you know, let's hear the conversation.
Now that Frank was no longer looming over their shoulder, the possibilities seemed endless. First and foremost, Rob and Fab launched a nationwide tour, since Frank and Arista held on to royalties made from album sales. Next, they took on leadership roles, watching over a staff of employees. Last but not least, they partnered with management in order to win their right to sing on the next album. Rob and Fab were now in control, and according to various sources, they started to believe in their own hype.
Critics I really don't take serious, you know, because I know my potential, I know Fabrice's potential. I just do my work and we will see. The future will show. The future, the near future, the late future will show who is really top, who has really potential for a world career.
You're surrounded by yes, 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 you're the greatest. So it's hard after a while not to believe your own press.
But it's a dangerous thing, fame, on one side, because people hype you every time, and you will recognize if you're famous. Then suddenly people don't tell you the truth anymore, just to stay with you, and then you, by yourself, lose the real sense of life.
They described their fame as being barred in a golden prison. On the outside, Rob and Fab appeared to be living the dream, but it no sooner turned into a nightmare. They turned to drugs to alleviate their misery.
But in the end, you're with yourself. And then the mirror goes up and you realize that this dream that you always wanted to live is not truly, you're not happy.
Said Frank Farian. They wanted to sing. They wanted to write songs. It never happened. They went to discos till 4 a.m. and slept all day. All they ever really did was party. Someone who lives like that can't make good music.
I tell him that we have to renegotiate their deal.
Right.
And he's laughing at me in my face. And he says, "You don't understand. They can't sing." And I said, "Well, that's your opinion. Obviously, millions of people think they can sing." No. You don't understand, Sandy. This is the woman's. And he's now, like, getting so angry at me. He smashed his hand on the table, yelled at me in German, and she said, "No, you don't understand. You don't know what you're talking about. They don't sing."
Regardless of their vocal abilities, Arista Records could not let the formula that generated the millions to change. The underlying question here is, how could Rob and Fab expect to appear on the next album without anyone batting an eye? It simply wasn't possible. This drawn-out battle that they initiated was nonsensical, but their objective was to prove that they were much more than the cash cows and puppets they were perceived to be. By the end of 1990, Milli Vanilli's reputation was declining swiftly. Their decision to remain in the spotlight left a trail of misfortunes, concert mishaps, poor etiquette, and misconstrued interviews. The second album was now in its final stages, meaning Rob and Fab never got to partake in its production. While it appeared that the war was over, both parties continued to play the cruel game of fate. Who was going to reveal the secret first? How? And when? On November of 1990, Rob and Fab returned to Germany to promote their new album, Keep On Running, which was set to be released the following year. Frank demanded they stay in Europe, but they refused.
So on the last trip we took to Germany, it was the first and last trip, promotional trip for the second album. We said, it's over, we're done. Do whatever you want, take us to court, do whatever. And he sent a very clear message. He said, I took you in, I'll take you out. Whatever, dude, we're out.
They returned to America with their eyes set on a world tour for 1991. This was their meal ticket for the next wave of income. They planned to usher in a new era with updated management and producers.
We're lining up like Latin America, Asia, everything's gonna go down. And the transition period, the transition that we were working on. But he heard about all that and he was like, I'm not gonna let them get more money. You're not gonna get paper on my watch. So he jumped the gun.
On the morning of November 12, 1990, Frank flew to New York City to deliver a message to the American press. Rob and Fab were not the real singers behind Milli Vanilli. Media frenzy ensued.
There's a sour note in the music world tonight with the revelation that pop duo Milli Vanilli faked their songs.
Girls, you know it's true. Ooh, ooh, ooh. You all through.
Hey, are you guys lip syncing?
No, we ain't lip syncing, fool.
Yeah, don't make me come over there and smack you, Ed.
So, girl, you know it's not true. Harry, Paul?
I was running a 5K on the UCLA track in Los Angeles. Our assistant came running and was screaming and was saying some things like, "The cat is out the bag." And we never heard that idiom before. And then he explained. And right there, I felt free. It's over. I don't have to deal with that. I don't have to carry that burden, that secret. But then on the other end, next was like, oh, what's going to happen next?
The day that Rob and Fab feared for the last 2 years was finally here. With Frank out of sight, Arista Records braced for the media and public backlash. Lip syncing has always been a topic of interest when it came to complex choreography routines, but a fabricated group to climb the Billboard charts and win a Grammy was beyond anything America could have prepared for. It contained a perfect storm of controversy, sensationalism, and entertainment. Once charming young men and talented performers, now fakes and criminals.
Yes, we were in front and we took the blame for everyone, but there was a machine behind, there was staff, there were professional people working the record with radio stations.
Clive Davis denied any knowledge of the deception and refused to make any further comments. Instead, the attention was directed towards Executive Vice President Roy Lott.
Rob and Fab, who appeared in the videos, did not actually sing on the record. This is something that is not uncommon from records coming from Europe.
Rob, Fab, and their former managers reported that Arista and even its parent company, BMG, knew about the false credits. Said Roy Lott, "There is no way that anyone could have known whether they sang or not. We are merely a distributor of the records." Rob, Fab, and Frank assured us that they sang on the record.
This is Clive Davis. If a pin dropped in the building, he knew.
As for Frank Farian, he was relieved that the truth was out, but didn't quite understand why the ordeal was blown out of proportion. Said Frank Farian, "What was the betrayal? Did anyone in America believe that the Village People or the Monkees really sang themselves? The Archies? Please. Everyone's been doing it for 25 years. Madonna, Janet Jackson. The best way to go on stage is with tapes." As we learned in Chapter 1, everything was planned before Rob and Fab came into the picture. Frank's version of the story said otherwise.
And Rob and Fab comes in the very early in '88. He comes in the studio when you have maybe it's something possible for demos that was very bad, and they looks very great. And I think maybe in the next time we have an idea for you. And then we created the music. Girl, you know it's true. The name was finished and the music was finished, and then make one click in my mind, and the crazy idea was born. Yeah.
If he had anything on tape or anything, he would have released that already, right? We were never given the opportunity to do that, ever.
A press conference was held on November 20th, 1990 in Ocean Way Recording Studios. Outside, protesters steamrolled their albums as former fans relished at their demise. Inside, Rob and Fab walked into what could potentially be described as a verbal lynching. They went up against reporters, fueled by mob mentality. but their limited English skills handicapped their ability to leave a lasting impression.
That is us, the two little guys from Germany, the victims who has to play suddenly the crooks of a trial that we are not.
Rob and Fab, joined by the attorney Alan Mintz, explained that prior to becoming stars, they were living in poverty. Frank's golden hand thrusted them into stardom, so they went along with the sham for the love of performing, but it ultimately cost them guilt and depression.
We stopped the whole thing. We said to Frank Farian, if you don't let us sing on the album, we don't do this anymore. We don't want to live like this. We don't want to be embarrassed every night. And that's why we said to Frank, if you don't let us sing, we won't do it. So he released the second album again. Now the people who really were involved, like Arista, like Frank, they still have a lot of more money than us, and they're fine out.
They wanted to prove they were credible artists all along. They planned to distribute tapes that contained the cover, but were asked to instead sing on the spot.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Girl, you know it's true. Ooh, 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 I love you.
I'm in love with you, girl, cause you're on my mind. You're the one I think about most every time. And when you crack a smile and everything you do.
The wave started to begin, nobody could stop the wave. We knew we were lost in the moment that we got the Grammy in the hand. We knew that gonna be
it was done.
And we regretted it. We tell our fans, we regretted it 200,000 times. Lying in front of her mom, lying in front of your girlfriend, lying in front of everybody. Ends up, it's one time, it's no problem. Over 2.5 years, it ends up in frustration, in depression. We were depressed. We wanted to get out. We are happy to be out.
As for the Grammy, the award and nominations subcommittee decided not to grant the award to the second runner-up, but instead have the spot vacated. It was the first and only time that a Grammy has been revoked. It remains locked in a vault to this day. Over 25 class action lawsuits emerged on the consumer fraud protection laws against Arista Records, including a criminal case aimed directly at Rob and Fab for racketeering charges. Consumer protection laws ensure that businesses are held liable for providing buyers with accurate information about their product.
People are buying the singer who sings the songs. They're not just buying the sounds that are being uttered. When somebody goes into the store to buy a Milli Vanilli album, they expect to be buying an album that is sung by Morvan and Pilatus. They weren't buying that.
Many disgruntled fans, most of them young unsuspecting teenagers, felt that they were deceived by the false packaging.
When I listened to the music, I would sort of picture them singing, and because all their photos and stuff are on the covers, I sort of just associated the music with them, and that's how I looked up to them.
A settlement was reached where buyers were entitled to not a full, but a partial refund. In order to be reimbursed, it was required to have your old receipt or the barcode of the record. Then, you had to buy merchandise sold by Arista Records. From there, rebates were calculated depending on what kind of recording you bought. CDs were worth a $3 reduction, cassettes were worth a $2 reduction, and singles were worth a $1 reduction. Additionally, concert attendees who held onto their ticket stubs could get a 5% discount off their total.
Sources tell us Milli Vanilli are not the only imposters in town.
In the wake of the scandal, Martha Walsh, one half of the Weather Girls, and her attorney, Stephen Brown, took on a series of lawsuits against various record labels over uncredited vocals and outstanding royalties.
The vocals that I did are my vocals, but they have someone else going out lip syncing or being shown in a video.
Martha and Stephen's triumph over these cases paved the way for the artists of today, past and future, by making it mandatory for record companies to provide vocal credits for all album and music video releases. We'll expand more on this later.
There's a lot of people who are still skeptical
Maybe they feel like they've been lied to and cheated, and still they don't want to hear our music. But when you hear it on the radio, when it's just by chance you hear it on the radio, I think if you liked it before, you're going to like it again.
Following the lip sync revelations, Frank recruited young talent Ray Horton, Gina Mohammed, and Leonard Slater to participate on the already existing album. It was released internationally in 1991 as The Real Milli Vanilli, The Moment of Truth, the second album.
We make the second album of Milli Vanilli. We involve new singers, this way, and I think it's fair we show everybody where is the real singer.
They embarked on a world tour where they ironically lip-synced to songs that they never appeared in. In 1992, the album was released in America as Try and Be. Including two photogenic singers that resemble Rob and Fab was far too blatant for American audiences. By the end of that year, the group parted ways. The year following the scandal, Rob and Fab stayed in America in order to pursue the music careers. Unfortunately for them, Americans were the toughest critics.
I can imagine how hard it is. You're a world star, and everybody knows you're the guy who sang Milli Vanilli. And then, all of a sudden, everybody knows that you're a fake. So it's nowhere you can go and be not, people are making fun of you.
Determined to show the world that they could sing, they toured nightclubs and small venues where they performed with their own voices. After struggling to find a record company to sign them, their manager came across Taj Records, a label that lacked credibility and funds to take on any album, but were willing to capitalize on their fallen reputation.
We don't want to end up in the history books as negative part in the music industry. We want to present this album to our fans who still love us and for ourselves with this album.
The album was released in 1993 and sold 2,000 records due to the label's inability to print and ship records to stores. Taj Records filed for bankruptcy shortly after.
Girl, you know it's true.
To lose everything so publicly was harsh. You don't know where to turn to because there's no body around you. You're left alone. We were famous and now we're infamous, just like that.
For the remainder of the 1990s, Rob and Fab maintained their brotherhood bond and embarked on a journey to rise from their sudden fall from grace. However, the public resentment eventually became too much to handle.
Everybody's laughing about you. Everybody's joking about you. And that destroyed basically Rob and Fab's friendship. Because whenever we were both together, it was much worse, the attention that we would get. So we didn't like to be together no more.
Their relationship dwindled further after completing substance abuse programs. While Fab was trying to maintain a drug-free lifestyle, Rob was unwilling to sober up.
When we grew up, then I became the big brother. And I tried and tried and tried and tried so many times to have him see the light, but he couldn't see it. As much love that I gave him, brotherly love, like, dude, I love you, but listen, you gotta get out of there because, the success is not everything. And he wasn't down with that. He wanted that life. That life was pretty much everything for him.
Do you ever see Rob anymore?
Well, we don't talk as much as we used to because he's doing his own thing, I'm doing my own thing,
Undeterred by the music industry's cold shoulder, Fab continued to focus on his passions for singing and songwriting. Rob, on the other hand, came full circle to his childhood, living in a foreign country without an identity.
I was an angry human being now, I was upset about what happened to me. I had regrets. And it was probably hard to be around me.
In 1991, Rob attempted suicide by threatening to jump out of a Los Angeles hotel.
We then formulated a plan where we could gain entry into room 909 next door, and once we were set in position in room 909, our station desk telephoned Mr. Pilatus' room, and as Mr. Pilatus left the balcony to answer the telephone, we then walked across the balcony into the room and detained him.
Pilatus was taken to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center and placed under 24-hour observation.
So they, what'd they do? They just pulled you over?
Yeah, they pulled me over, man. Unfortunately. Record coming out soon.
Yeah?
Yeah. Scandal, I guess.
Between 1995 and 1996, he found himself in a series of legal troubles. He was charged with auto tampering and assault on 4 separate occasions. His last offense sentenced him to 6 months in rehab and 3 months in jail. Frank Farian bailed him out and flew him back to Germany to place him under another drug rehabilitation program. Upon his return, they planned to produce music together. Sadly, that day never came. On April 3rd, 1998, Robert passed away in his sleep due to a fatal combination of alcohol and prescription pills. He was 33 years old.
When the news came, my ears they rang. And suddenly I realized that he's not coming back from this one. We had a lot of close call before, but it's over. And I said to myself, I'm gonna channel this pain into music, which I love. And I worked on an album called Love Revolution, and I dedicated a song to Rob Pilatus. Before I leave, I'd like to sing a few of those lines. Oh no, don't take that alley. You will see it's the wrong place to be for your soul. But who am I to tell you what to do? But it's your life. But it's your life.
It's been 30 years since the revelations unfolded before our very eyes. While unfortunately, Robert is no longer with us, Fabrice is still alive and healthy. In 2003, he released his first solo album, Love Revolution. For the years that followed, he released several singles independently. A new album is currently in the works with former vocalist John Davis. They toured together as Face Meets Voice, a Milli Vanilli experience.
It's never too late for anything. As long as you focus on yourself and you treat yourself like your best friend. Go hard. Life is too short. Give it all you got.
Milli Vanilli continues to carry a stigma to this day, and rightfully so. It was a scam. There's no other way to put it. Studio manipulation and maintaining the right image is still prevalent today. While we can't compare what Milli Vanilli did with other artists, there's still a correlation there. You may disagree, but I think there's a variety of conversations to be had. Let's talk about packaging and visuals. In 1990, Martha Wash's vocals were used for several artists. You're My One and Only was released by Seduction. Gonna Make You Sweat was released by CNC Music Factory, and various tracks were released by Black Box. In 1989, Technotronic released their first single, Pump Up the Jam. A model promoted the single until it was re-released by the real singer, Your Kid K. The Pussycat Dolls' first album, PCD, featured Nicole Scherzinger as the principal vocalist. The remainder of the group lip-synced to her vocals during live performances. Artists like Sia, Daft Punk, and Slipknot concealed their identities in order to separate themselves from their onstage personas. It's a trait linked to their image, and it's perfect for packaging and presentation purposes. Bands like the Archies, Gorillaz, and Alvin and the Chipmunks have all reached international success with animated visuals fronting the band. Let's talk about studio manipulation and crediting. Britney Spears' vocals have been a subject of controversy since the launch of her career. They are altered in post-production, so much so that it's impossible to replicate during live performances. Autotune is designed to mask vocal tracks and correct its pitch. It came to prominence in the music scene with Cher's Believe in the late 1990s. At the turn of the century, it was pioneered by artists like T-Pain and Kanye West. These modifications bar consumers from getting legitimate, raw vocals. Several of Jennifer Lopez's hits contain vocals by other artists that went credited and others uncredited. Among those on the list include Ashanti, and Christina Milian.
Yeah, and they left your vocals on it. You sing the chorus.
Oh
so.
yeah, I sang on the chorus.
So
but I think that's kind of like a known thing. It's like a background chorus.
We're pushing it here, but what about ghostwriters? Elvis reached massive success in the 1960s, but he did not write most of his songs. Here's a quote by his producer, Sam Phillips. Well, I understand if you want to say that it's completely different, because you're right, it is different. I suppose the point I'm trying to make here is that packaging is an integral part of the music industry. The lines have been blurred so deeply that hardly anything is authentic, whether it's audible or visual. How far do you have to push something in order for it to be considered fraudulent? Let's continue the discussion below. Thanks for sticking around. Until next time, thanks for watching.